Now, when I first heard that they were going to make a remake to Poltergeist, I was very worried. I thought, how could they make a remake to such a classic horror movie that was directed or, well, produced by Steven Spielberg? But then I saw the trailer and I had some high hopes for it. I thought this could be good, and though I was very hesitant when it was a PG-13 movie, and there's been quite a few restraints on PG-13 movies lately. Now, I'm not going to be one of the people that says that the remake to Poltergeist is an absolutely awful movie or an abomination to film. No, I'm not going to say that because it does have its good points. There are things that I like about it, and it could have been far worse than it is. And it actually is fairly good. It's just not as good as the original, of course. Just like the original Poltergeist, this one is centered around a family of five that are living in a home and suddenly paranormal activity starts happening, or their youngest daughter starts talking to people that aren't there, and there's an incident with a TV and she gets sucked into a closet. The youngest daughter gets trapped into this ghostly plane and the family is desperate to get her back. The plot is basically the same. Now, before I say anything bad about the film, let's start with the positives. First off, the acting was pretty decent, and the best actors I thought were Sam Rockwell, which he was very good. He had subtle moments. He had moments where he definitely needed to be dramatic, and he was good at it. And he's funny when he needs to be funny. He's really good. He's a cool guy. Best actor in the movie, I think. Also, the young actor that played the little boy in the movie, I think he was really good as well. He acted really scared when he really needed to be scared. And even though he's practically scared almost the entire movie, it still never became too much. Jared Harris was pretty good as well. I'll go a little bit more into detail about his character later, but for the most part, everyone else was pretty good. There was nothing that stood out as really awful acting, so that's a plus side. Now, something different that they did in this Poltergeist that I liked was there was more of a character arc for the young boy. In fact, the first Poltergeist was more about the family as a whole and mainly about the parents. But in this one, it felt like it was mainly about the kids, and in particular, the boy in this movie. And I think he's the only one that truly had a character arc in this movie where he's a scared boy at the beginning of the movie and he learns to be brave. So there is a whole story arc for that character, and I thought that was done pretty well, and I like that about this film. Now, if you've seen the original, there is a scene where they're trying to contact their daughter through the TV, and eventually something starts chasing her, and they don't know what's happening because they don't see it. And this scene in the new one is a little different, and this one you get to see a little bit of what might be going on because you can see her shadow, and you don't see her but just her shadow, and I thought that scene was handled pretty well as well. I really liked that scene. And I think they did a pretty good job at modernizing this version of Poltergeist because while some of the technology might be a little bit more in your face, they also have Sam Rockwell's character has been laid off from work, and so he's out of a job, and it's sort of reference to the economy during this time as opposed to the original Poltergeist film. And then while I thought the teenage daughter's acting was okay, I didn't like the teenage daughter's character in the movie, and honestly, I had totally forgotten there was even a teenage daughter in the original. It wasn't until I watched the original again that I realized that there was a teenage daughter. It's just she was barely in the original movie. And while there's things in that feel like a stereotypical teenage daughter, it's even more so in this new one because there's more of her. And while the acting is decent or good all around in this new Poltergeist movie, I didn't really feel the desperation in the family as much as I did in the original. And it is there in the new one. It's just not as much. It doesn't feel as desperate or the emotions don't feel as raw as the original for Poltergeist. And while the CGI ghost didn't bother me that much, it was a lower point in this movie. Because the CGI, there's such a contrast to them that they almost look cartoony compared to the rest of the environment. It almost reminds me of what the World War Z zombies looked when they were in huge hordes, you know, when they actually had to use CGI for those zombies. That's kind of what the ghosts look like in this movie. And you get even more of that when they go into the ghost dimension. Yeah, in this new one, you actually do get to see the ghost dimension where the little girl is kidnapped. Anyway, as opposed to the original where you don't really get to see the ghostly plane at all, you just see the light at the end of the closet and you see them depart from the ceiling. You don't really see what it's like inside, and I think that added a little bit more of a mystery to the original. And in this one, I'm kind of glad you get to see it, but at the same time, it wasn't as great as I hoped it would be, and you get to see, unfortunately, a little bit more of the CGI ghosts that look a little like World War Z zombies. And while I like Jared Harris's character in this movie a little, he's almost like a Captain Ahab type character, just a ghost hunter, because he's constantly showing his scars of all these different, where all these different ghost entities had either bit him or sliced him up or something. So he's got like these scars, so he has almost like a Captain Ahab feel to him. And I kind of like him, but it's still, at the same time, I like the medium a little more in the original just because she's creepy as heck. But let's get down to the most important stuff that most of you are wondering. Well, how are the scares in this movie, and how does it compare to the original with some of the things? Well, let me just tell you that most of the things in the original are in this film, like the clown dolls in it and the trees in it, and most of the things that you can remember from the first one are in it. It's just, unfortunately, they're over and done with a little too quickly. It's almost like they aren't even full scenes. Let me give you an example and compare and contrast the original with the new one. And let's talk about the tree. So here's how it played out in the original. In the original, the little boy and the little girl, they both slept in the same room, and he slept nearer to the window. And suddenly there's a lightning storm. They're counting the lightning, and the tree's arms, which are all practical effect, burst through the window, grab them, and take him out. And I think the parents get in there just in time to see him get pulled away. And so they're running downstairs to go get the boy and try to help him escape from this tree, as this tree starts trying to eat him. Meanwhile, there's a tornado happening, the sky is completely black, and while they're struggling to get their son out of this tree, Caroline is getting pulled into the closet, and she's hanging on for dear life to her bed. And while I don't know the exact time that elapses through the scene, it keeps jumping back and forth, but it feels like a long time because you really get a sense of their struggle and just how desperate they are. And then eventually she's pulled into the closet, and when that happens, they get him out of the tree, but the tree, as it starts getting pulled up by the tornado, its roots latch onto the kid, and it's a crazy ordeal. Now let's take a look at the new one. The tree bursts through the window because he's sleeping in the attic, and there's a window up in the attic. He escapes and runs down the stairs very easily, and he gets to where Caroline is. Well, not Caroline in this movie because it's a different character name, but he sees her, and she's gonna get sucked up into the closet, and he's like, just stay away from the closet because he's too scared. And so he starts running down to get his older sister because his older sister is babysitting him. Well, while that happens, the tree had somehow, and this is a CGI effect, and it almost looks like a zombie hand, to be frank, it had somehow reached in, crawled down the attic stairs into the hall, grabs him, pulls him up, and it's a pretty nice shot where the camera follows him as he's getting dragged all the way through the house. Then you get a shot looking up as he's being dragged up into the tree. And then the parents, they had been out, and so they get home, and as they drive up into the driveway, they see their little boy hanging from the tree. The tree just drops him, he's fine, and then they search for Caroline. Yeah, the parents don't even get a chance to struggle and save their son from a tree that's trying to eat them. This tree doesn't even try to eat him, just sort of just dangles him a bit, drops him, and that's it. And that's pretty much a sense of what all the rest of the horror scenes are like. All the things that are taken from the iconic stuff that was in the first one are shown in it, but it's a little quicker because this movie, while the original is like almost 2 hours long, this one's about 90 minutes. It's a little quicker, it's a little straight and to the point, and there's not as much struggle or desperation or danger involved as it is in the original. And while it's still shot pretty well and it's still pretty good, it's still better than some other horror movies that have come out, it just still can't match up to the original, which is unfortunate. Another scene that I was bummed that wasn't in this new film, which I understand because there's a little bit more restrictions to PG-13 movies nowadays, but I do miss the part where the guy's ripping his own face off. I mean, that's an iconic scene from the original, and it could have been done better in this one, but it's a PG-13 movie, so they probably couldn't do it. And so instead you get a small shot of Sam Rockwell looking into the sink, and yeah, this is actually in the trailer, so what you see in the trailer is pretty much all it is to the scene. But he sees his reflection in the sink, and that's how you see it, and he's just bleeding like black out of his nose and eyes and ears, I think. And that's about it. But I think more disappointing than that is the climax at the end of the film. And when I watched the new one, I thought, this is a pretty good climax. There were some things about it that I didn't like about it as much, but it's a decent one, and it is decent. It's just that in the other one, it's so over the top that it's crazy. It's like all the coffins are like bursting out and all through the house. The kids are all trapped in this room as the vortex is trying to suck them into the closet. And not only that, you see a little bit more. Instead of just a bright light, it almost looks like the inside of a throat is like trying to suck them into this crazy dimension. And the mother is desperately trying to get to her kids because she can't, because the house tries to throw everything it can to block her from the kids, like a skeletal ghost right in front of their door, and then throwing her into the pool where there's all these skeletons just popping out of the ground, and coffins are coming up, and the house is just being ripped apart. It's really intense. There is intense moments in the climax of this film, I'm not going to deny that, but it's just not as intense. So overall, I don't consider the new Poltergeist a bad film. It's just, when you try to compare it to the classic and original Poltergeist, then yeah, you're gonna most likely not like this new one at all. But overall, it still has its decent moments, and it still has moments that I really like in the film. So I'm going to give the new Poltergeist 3 stars. I still liked it. There's still things that could have been done better, and it still doesn't compare to the amazingness of the original, which I would give 5 stars to. So have you seen the new Poltergeist film? What did you think about it? Go ahead and comment. And if you haven't seen the new Poltergeist, then what is your favorite horror movie remake? If you've liked this review, then go ahead and subscribe or check out my other 2015 reviews. I have plenty to see. As always, this is BruceGifford, and this was Just My Opinion.